رحم الله من يقرأ سورة الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. الحمد لله رب العالمين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تعالى في كتابه المجيد: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل لا أسألكم عليه أجرا إلا المودة في القربى. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات على محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Your second salawat for love of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. And your loudest of salawat as congratulations to the master of our time, Sahibul Asr wa Zaman. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Our discussion tonight and tomorrow night is focused around this fundamental that Allah gave us in the Quran. Whenever a prophet came to a group of people and he brought the message of hidayah and guidance, and people recognized and appreciated this message of hidayah and guidance, they became aware of a fact that this personality has sacrificed from his life and he has given us the key to heaven. And whenever a Nabi would come to a people and people took hidayah, what they would do is they would come to that Nabi and they would say, thank you, you gave us hidayah. What can we give you in return? How can we compensate you for connecting us to our Creator? It can be seen as twofold. If we look at it as a material aspect, right? Materially, there was an acknowledgement and a recognition that materially, this personality, this Nabi, gave us akhirah. When we look at it, for example, the same way akhirah, when we work for akhirah in dunya, it's like working for your 401k, right? I have a finance background, we're going to mention some math, it's going to come. What do we say? We say that, yeah, I want to work today, but I want the benefit later. So we say the 401k is my investment, that I know that tomorrow when I'll be in need, when I don't have any more money, when I can't work anymore and I can't benefit, I have a benefit that will come to me, that's my 401k. The same way the people in the time of the Anbiya would recognize that in Akhirah there is eternal heaven or eternal hell. Once I enter into one of those domains, I can't change. Furthermore, we know hell is a very scary place. Once you die, you only have the first death. After that, there's no death. So you go to hell, you suffer in pain, there's no dying. So when people would recognize that a Nabi came and gave us hidayah, gave us guidance, physically, materially, that guidance was a source of investing in akhirah and getting a good return in akhirah. Spiritually, it was the connection between the Creator and the creation. That I found myself without purpose in life. I found myself existing on this earth without direction. Is my purpose only to eat, sleep, and die? Is my purpose to only struggle in this life for some reward or some benefit and then die? But the Nabi came and taught you, no, there's purpose in this life. You were created to build a connection with your Creator and to benefit from that. So when people would see that a Nabi gave them purpose in life, they would go to the Nabi and they would say, you gave us hidayah, what can we give you in return? Every Nabi who came said to the people, I don't want any reward from you. لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا. I don't ask from you any reward. Certainly my reward is with Allah. However, when the people came to our holy Prophet Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Allah commanded him, he did not say of his own choosing, Allah commanded him, say to the people, قُلْ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا. I don't want any reward from you, إِلَّا الْمَوَدَّةَ فِي الْقُرْبَى. except the mawadda for my near ones. Now, there's a lengthy discussion on the purpose of what is this term of mawadda. In the Arabic language, there are many terms that describe love. Many terms. Like they say when something is important in a language, it has many words for it. For example, when they say Eskimos in their language have many words for ice because life is surrounded by ice. Arabic is a poetic language. The purpose of poetry is the expression of feelings. Love is an important emotion. Love is described in many terms in Arabic. This khususan, this term of mawadda, reflects a deep and passionate, almost to some extent, some translations put it as a crazy love. And Allah said, tell your ummah that I want you to have such a love for your near ones. And our purpose in these 2 nights is to develop this love for these near ones. Tonight, by mentioning one of the grandsons of Rasulullah, and tomorrow by focusing on the daughter of Rasulullah. But in understanding and having ma'rifah, you can't love someone you don't know. You can't love someone you don't know. The love that I can have for someone is superficial. I like this person. Or we say that he gave me something so I like him and I appreciate him. But love doesn't come without understanding. Love comes from that aspect. The better I understand someone, the deeper my feelings are for them, the more my relationship is with them. Our goal is to have mawaddat, this deep-seated love for these personalities. So we want to look at their lives as an example to have understanding, to have direction, to have focus, that when I think of this person, I know who I am thinking of. When I say, oh Imam Zainul Abidin, be my wasila, like we do in Dua Tawassal. And we ask these Aimma to be our wasila, that they are the ones who will give us shifa'. Ishfa' lana indallah. How is that possible if I don't know this person? So our goal is the same way that we focus on developing our faith, our connection to our faith, our example for our faith, our teacher for what is faith and what is a life of faith, is this Ahlul Bayt. So we want to take these opportunities to discuss them and to learn from their examples. Tonight, inshallah, we'll discuss briefly in 2 or 3 parts. One, mentioning the association of this personality of who it was that Imam Zainul Abidin most resembled, how he most resembled this personality, and finally we'll spend some time discussing his role as the Imam and what was his obligation as the Imam. With your loudest of salawat ala Muhammad. We have a narration, a very famous narration, that talks about how Imam Hussain was someone who gave away every ni'mah he received in the way of Allah. In this narration, it discusses the idea that when Imam Hussain would have a son that was born to him, he would say, sons are ni'mah, or bounties from Allah, and a bounty from Allah is something that we, the Ahlul Bayt, give away in charity. We don't keep for ourselves. This narration goes that when Imam Zainul Abidin was born, Imam Hussain took his son and he said, ni'mah is something that we receive from Allah, that Allah questions. The bounties the Ahlul Bayt receive, we give away. And Imam Hussain took his son and placed him by the grave of his grandfather Rasulullah and said, oh Allah, I leave this to you. And it was Amir al-Mu'mineen Imam Ali who picked him up. The same way when we talk about, for example, in Waqia of Karbala, we talk about the relationship of the son of Imam Hussain, Ali al-Akbar alayhi salam, and his relationship with Sayyidah Zainab, because the narration's right that when Imam al-Akbar was born, Imam Hussain said the same thing, ni'mah is something we receive from Allah, that is a bounty, bounties are questioned, we the Ahlul Bayt give away our bounties. And when he again placed his child at the foot of the grave of his grandfather, it was Sayyidah Zainab who picked him up, which made the special relationship between the two. And the third, Asghar, was the one who was picked up by his older sister, Fatima. This association comes in play when we talk about and we look at the personality of Imam Zainul Abidin. And in Tariq, they write, there was no one who was more similar to Amir al-Mu'mineen in Tariq than Ali ibn al-Hussain. And they give the explanation. They say in this process that Imam Ali was the first one who picked up this child, and he was the one who gave him his tarbiyah and his character. And the famous narration came that on one day Imam al-Baqir narrates, he says, I came into the room after I had seen my father in worship the entire night. And he said to me, oh my son, bring to me such and such paper that is kept in such and such place. When I brought it, I saw my father read the paper, and the paper fell from his hands. And he said, no one can worship like the worship of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. That Imam Zainul Abidin was describing that no matter how I worship, and I may be the closest in shabahat, in similarity to Amir al-Mu'mineen, no one comes close to Imam Ali alayhi salam. And this is where we usually finish the parallel. We say that Imam Zainul Abidin, the adornment of the believers, was like Amir al-Mu'mineen in his worship. We say Amir al-Mu'mineen was famous for his worship, Imam Zainul Abidin was famous for his worship. But in reality, the similarity goes much further. And this is an interesting point. When we look at the personality of Imam Zainul Abidin, we see him as someone who is, for example, madhloom. But the Imam had many great characteristics, and hence we'll discuss his position of Imamat after we finish this point. But before we get there, even one more point. Today is the 15th of Jamad al-Awwal, not the 5th of Sha'ban. The famous tariq for the Wiladat of our fourth Imam is the 5th of Sha'ban. This is one of the lesser known dates, but still it is a date that is associated with him, and again, out of our interest in developing love with him, we commemorate this date as well too. The same way when we talk about Sayyidah Zahra, we talk about 3 sets of dates for Fatimiyya, and we commemorate all of these dates. Why? To build that relationship and that connection with Sayyidah Zahra. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. To say that Imam Zainul Abidin is similar to Amir al-Mu'mineen and say that, oh, they were both great worshippers, would be an injustice to both of these personalities. When history looks at the personality of Imam Ali alayhi salam, they say we have never seen a paradox like him in existence. How? On the one side we see an abid, a worshipper. On the other side we see a warrior. These are antithesis qualities. They don't make sense. A worshipper is someone who is meek and soft, and a warrior is someone who is hard and difficult. On another side, we see him to be a statesman who was famous for his ability to resolve conflict and issue amongst people. And on other sides, we see him as someone who is adil and just. That a statesman is a politician, that how can he be someone who is a politician and can deal with the difficulties of people, and at the same point in time no one can question his justice or his humanitarian efforts. We saw in Amir al-Mu'mineen such characteristics that were never combined together in one person. We didn't understand how it's possible for one person to embody all of these characteristics perfectly. Right? It doesn't make sense. A warrior is also someone who has eloquence in speech. Otherwise they say a warrior is someone who is so busy in his arts of war that he doesn't have time to develop his other qualities. A statesman is someone who is not a warrior because he spends all of his time in his eloquence and working on his words. Yet we take a look at Amir al-Mu'mineen, all of these qualities were present in a characteristic that no one could match him. This is one of the sifat of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, that he is someone who was such a complete and well-rounded individual. So now when we look at Imam Zainul Abidin and we say Imam Zainul Abidin was the one who most resembled Imam Ali, how is it possible that it was only the aspect of worship that united these two? Remember, the worship of Amir al-Mu'mineen was such that he would lose consciousness in the middle of his dua to Allah. These Thursday nights are not a small matter. These Thursday nights are a moment when Allah says, on the night of Thursday, on the night of Friday, I send down from the heavens my angels who call out to humanity, if you have a desire, ask me tonight, I will answer it for you. When Nabi Yaqub's sons came to him and they said to him, Ya Rasulullah, oh Father, we recognize we made a mistake with Yusuf and we abused him in a way that was incorrect. Ask Allah to forgive us. Nabi Yaqub says, I will ask for you in the future. He waited for this Thursday night to ask for the forgiveness of his sons. This Thursday night is not a small matter, that we take a look at the worship of these personalities. And yes, there were similarities, but take a look and see, don't do an injustice to Imam Zainul Abidin and recognize him only as a worshipper. My Imam was someone who had all of these characteristics that were present in his grandfather, and they were present in just accord. If you want to take a look and see at Nahj al-Balagha and the peak of eloquence and the beauty of the speech of Amir al-Mu'mineen, look at the speech of Imam Zainul Abidin in the court of Yazid. Look at one word that he says in the court of Yazid. We won't even narrate the entire speech. He says simply this: when they tried to stop the speech of Imam Zainul Abidin, Yazid said, begin the call for adhan. They said, it's not the time for prayer. They said, say anything, start the adhan to stop the speech of this Ali ibn al-Hussein. He is killing me in my own court. And the muazzin began the adhan. And one statement we'll mention, when the muazzin gets to Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, Imam Zainul Abidin turns to him and he says, stop. Is that name in that azan the name of my grandfather Yazid or the name of your grandfather? If it is your grandfather, you are a liar. And if it is my grandfather, then tell me, why did you kill my father Hussain? Why did you kill the grandson of Rasulullah? That's one phrase. Look at the power of that statement and how he breaks the court. That even the court that's in a moment of celebration recognizes the embarrassment of the condition. That how are we the ones who are celebrating the murder of that prophet, the murder of the grandson of that prophet whose name we are listening to. So in fasaha, he was as appropriate as Amir al-Mu'mineen, that his speeches were those that broke the court of the enemy before him. When you want to take a look and see at the process of how these were recorded, take a look and see, there's a statement by Allama Majlisi. Allama Majlisi narrates it. Allama Majlisi is the one who compiled Bihar al-Anwar. Bihar al-Anwar is that series of books where he compiled every hadith that he could find. In one narration, Allama Majlisi says, I had the opportunity to meet the master of our time, Sahib al-Asri wal-Zaman. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. May Allah hasten the reappearance of our Imam. Tonight is the night and tomorrow is the day that we wait for the dhuhr of our Imam. Inshallah, by the mention of the Imam, may Allah hasten his reappearance for us. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Allama Majlisi narrates, he says that I had the opportunity to meet my Imam. When I met my Imam, I asked him a question. And Allama Majlisi is narrating, he wouldn't tell a narration that he himself did not believe to be true or his experience he shares. He says, I asked the Imam, is there a book that you can recommend to us that we should keep attached to and that we can benefit from in the time of your ghaibah? Is there a book, is there something you can give me as a recommendation that in this time of difficulty would be to our benefit? You and I are in the same time as Allama Majlisi, we're in the time of ghaibah. The situation is difficult. If you had the opportunity to ask your Imam, what better question than this to ask? What is a good source of support for me in this time? What is a good source that I should utilize in this time to be able to connect and to protect my faith? Imam Zaman himself, Allama Majlisi narrates, said to me, keep attached to the recitation of Sahifa Sajjadiyya. The book of Imam Zainul Abidin is such that my 12th Imam recommends that in this difficult time, if you need assistance and that you should stay attached to the du'as that Imam Zainul Abidin narrated. Now what is this book? This is that book in which the Imam compiles both his writings and his supplications. The same way that Dua Kumail is something that our 8th Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Rida alayhi salam made a statement. He says, this Dua Kumail I recommend for you that you recite every night. If you can't recite it every night, recite it once a week. If you can't recite it once a week, recite it once a month. If not once a month, once every 3 months, or once every 6 months, once a year. He says, I tell you, the barakah of this Dua Kumail is such that don't let your life go by except that you've at least recited it once in your life. And I guarantee you will see the benefits for it. And Imam is making the statement. And the same way he makes that statement about the dua given to Kumail by Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Zaman is making that statement about the du'as given by Imam Zainul Abidin to you and I. How is this book? There is another story that's told in Najaf that says that in that time there used to be communication some years back between Al-Azhar, which is the oldest school of the Sunni schools and the Madahib and schools of thought, and it's one of the most famous schools of theirs, and Najaf. And the ulama used to go back and forth, and there's a book called Al-Muraja'at, which is the right path, that talks about the letters that went back and forth. And one such scholar wrote a letter to a scholar in Najaf. He says, when I see you Ja'fari, I see you, Imami sect, I see and I understand all of your Imams. I understand their qualities. But there is one who I don't understand. This Ali ibn al-Hussein, why is he an Imam of yours? He did not fight like his father. He was not the teacher like his sons. He was not like Hassan, who was given the authority from Ali. Why did you make him an Imam? And this scholar from Najaf To reply, all he did was he took the Sayfa Sajjadiyya and mailed it to the scholar in Al-Azhar. He said, Khalas, read this and you'll understand. The scholar wrote back, and this is famous, this is a famous narration that's told. Scholar wrote back, he says, I did not understand who is Allah until I read this book. If you want to talk about fasaha, look, the one who refuses to acknowledge the status of Imam Zainul Abidin is turning around and saying that I could not know Allah until I read this book. Imam Zainul Abidin, in the same way as his forefather as Amir al-Mu'mineen, had the same strength in his speech, had the same strength in his supplication. Now you want to see Amir al-Mu'mineen as the warrior. You see Amir al-Mu'mineen as the warrior and you say Imam Zainul Abidin was not a warrior. No. As a matter of fact, in Tariq there is written this letter from Mal'un, Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. Muawiyah, after he takes the authority from Imam Hassan alayhi salam, he changes and he breaks up many of the supporters of Amir al-Mu'mineen. And this is a point in history. If you'd like, we can take a moment. If you're not too tired. All right. We can discuss many points, but I need to make sure you don't fall asleep on me because I can keep going. In Tariq, what you take a look and you see after Shahadat of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Hassan alayhi salam takes the Khilafat for a period of 6 months. In this time period, after the Battle of Siffin, Imam Ali in his life had been raising an army to fight Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan the second time. And the Battle of Siffin in its discussion is a lengthy one. Muawiyah eventually, he gains the treaty with Imam Hassan alayhi salam and he comes to the city of Kufa and he says, I did not become the caliph, the khalifa over you for prayers and fasting. I am the one who will rule over you. And in this light, what he does is he sees Kufa as the central battalion and location of the supporters of Ali ibn Abi Talib. He sees that as his enemy base. And what does he do? He breaks it apart. Those families and clans that were loyal to Imam Ali alayhi salam in the city of Kufa, he takes them and he pushes them out to other provinces and areas within the Islamic capital. The ones who are truly loyal to Imam Ali. This is why when we take a look at Waqi'a Karbala and we say it was the people of Kufa who called to Imam Hussain, these weren't the same people who were the supporters of Imam Ali, most of them. The sincere lovers of Ahlul Bayt had been kicked out of Kufa long ago. And the goal of Muawiyah was break up any place that there should be no support left for my opposition. Imam Hassan, what does he do after he abdicates? He moves back to Medina. And the Shia again begin to gather in Medina. So one of the counselors of Muawiyah, he writes, he says, you are interested in retaining your support and authority. Hassan is shaheed now, he's gone. But you are worried, how will the authority transfer to your son Yazid? Then why don't you break up Medina as well, the same way that you broke up Kufa? And this isn't, you can find this letter in various history books. Al-Amamini narrates this in Kitab al-Ghadir as well, and in some other history books you can pick this up as well too. Muawiyah writes back a letter. He says, I would sack the city of Medina and break it apart except for the presence of 5 personalities in the city of Medina. Had it not been for these 5 people who live in Medina, I believe that my army could control Medina. But with their presence, I believe no matter the size of the army I sent to Medina, they would waylay my army and I would not be able to accomplish this goal. Who are these 5 personalities? One is Muhammad Hanafiya, one of the sons of Imam Ali. The second is Abdullah ibn Ja'far, the son of Ja'far al-Tayyar. The third is Imam Hussain alayhi salam. The fourth is narrated as Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam. And the fifth that he says is Ali ibn al-Hussein, is a personality who is present amongst those people of Medina, that should he be brought to war, him and these 4 personalities would be enough to finish my army. Meaning that even the enemy acknowledges the power of Imam Zainul Abidin in battle. Imam Zainul Abidin was a warrior. He was prevented from fighting in Karbala. Allah had hikmah in this. When we talk about the sickness of Imam Zainul Abidin in Karbala, there are narrations that talk about how did he become sick. They said Imam Zainul Abidin was such a personality that he took the chainmail armor that you wear and he was tearing it with his bare hands. And in the process he received a wound, and the wound that he received was the cause of his sickness. If you want to talk about Imam Zainul Abidin as a warrior, He was someone who even Muawiyah Mal'un was afraid of, and two, he was someone who had the strength that had he been given the opportunity would have been a supporter for his father. But it was the hikmah of Allah, as Imam Hussain mentioned when Imam Zainul Abidin in his state of sickness came out of the tents, that, "Oh my son, return to the tents, otherwise the authority of Allah on this earth would be finished with you." The responsibility was greater than fighting. So we see in this aspect his similarity to Amir al-Mu'mineen as well too, of being a great warrior. You want to see the generosity, look at the generosity and giving of Amir al-Mu'mineen, who would go in the night and hide his face to feed the family and the poor of Medina. That on the shahadat of Amir al-Mu'mineen, the orphans and the poor came out of the city to say, "Where has the one who gave us food every night gone?" And Imam Hassan said, "That was my father who would come and feed you in the night." When Imam Zainul Abidin, in the same way in his generosity comes, they say that when Imam Zainul Abidin's ghusl was done, they said, "We recognize that his knees should be calloused from his prayers, but we did not understand why he had calluses on his shoulders. So we went to his son Imam al-Baqir and we said, we recognize these calluses as those that your father earned from his prayers. That's why he was known as Zainul Abidin, the jewel or the adornment of the believers. He was known as Sayyid al-Sajidin, the master of the ones who prostrate before Allah. But why did he have calluses on his shoulders?" And Imam al-Baqir replied, "If my father was alive, I would never tell you. But these are the calluses my father earned from carrying sacks of food on his shoulders every night to feed the poor and the needy in the city of Medina." You see, Imam Zainul Abidin, when we say he was similar to Amir al-Mu'mineen, it's not sufficient that we say their worship was similar. Look at all of these similarities in action, which is why we make the statement, when we look at Ali ibn al-Hussain, there was no one more similar to Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. Salawat In this way we recognize the characteristics and the attributes that the continuation of the speeches of Amir al-Mu'mineen are in Sahifa Sajjadiyya. That the way to supplicate to Allah that we learn through Dua Kumail and the Munajat of Amir al-Mu'mineen is continued in the du'as and the supplications of Imam Zainul Abidin. You see, when we look at these individuals, yes, they have their individual characteristics, but there's a misunderstanding that we have that the Imam, for example, was mazloom, and because of his mazloomiyat, he did not go out into society. He was not politically active. He was not involved in the affairs of the people. This is not true. You see, the fact to be impacted by your situation in life is the characteristic of a normal human being. For example, I go through some trauma, and after that trauma I don't want to speak. I don't want to be in society or community. This is something that happens to a normal human being. This is someone who has ikhtiyar over his actions and can choose, I want to spend time in society, I don't want to spend time in society. An Imam is not like a normal person. An Imam is the hujjah and the authority of Allah on this earth. The Imam does not by his discretion decide what responsibility he will take and what responsibility he won't take. This is an understanding of the position of Imam. You see, we recognize and we look at the Imam and we see certain characteristics in him. For example, they look at Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba and they say he is the one who made peace. They look at Imam al-Hussain, they say he is the one who made war. They look at Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam and they say he is the one who was the teacher. They look at Imam al-Radha and they look at him and say he was the one who was the statesman. You see, to us we look at them as these characteristics, but an Imam is someone who is above these characteristics. How? If you would put Imam Sadiq in the position of Imam Hussain, would Imam Sadiq have done anything differently? No. If you put Imam Hassan in the position of Imam Hussain, would he have done anything different? No. An Imam does exactly what is necessary for that time. An Imam is not limited by his characteristics or his environment. The Imam does what the society needs to protect the message of Islam. when we look at Imam Zainul Abidin and we look at the Imamat of Imam Zainul Abidin, it's not that the time as Imam spent in authority that he was mazloom and he was the one who was in shock because of Karbala, that he didn't go out and speak. Rather, it was the necessity of the time that the Imam didn't go out and speak. Now, and which is why history becomes an important part of these conversations to understand the role of the Imam. When we take a look at history at the time of Imam Zainul Abidin, we begin to recognize the climate and what would have happened if the Imam became publicly active. Now, we talk about after Waqi'ah of Karbala, Yazid's Khilafat lasts for 3 years. The first of those years is the Waqi'ah of Karbala. In the second of those years is the sacking of the city of Medina, where Yazid sends his army to Medina and he attacks the entire city as standing in opposition to him, and they say that from that attack there were over 1,000 illegitimate children born the next year. The third year of the Khilafat of Muawiyah, of Yazid Mal'un, he launches attack on the city of Mecca. And they say by the fire of cannon, he destroyed even the Kaaba in the city of Mecca. 3 years of Khilafat, 3 major events that take place. The first is the killing of the grandson of the Prophet. 2, sacking of the city of the Prophet and violating the sanctity of the grave of the Prophet. How? They said that these people came and they sought sanctuary next to the grave of Rasulullah, and they weren't given sanctuary by the army of Yazid. Meaning the rapes that took place and the killings that took place were in front of the grave of Rasulullah. And the third, the house of Allah on this earth was something that was attacked under the Khilafat of Yazid and destroyed. When we take a look at these 3 events occurring, we recognize that all things that were kept sanctified in the religion of Islam were violated by the Banu Umayyah. The establishment came that at this point in time, nothing is sacred in Islam other than the authority of the Khalifa, which is why the event of Karbala was what established that the Khilafah doesn't speak for Islam. In this situation, the Imam, who has already learned that the sanctity of the religion of Islam will not be respected, had he been someone who by our opinion should have stood up against these personalities, he would have been someone who, like his grandfather, his uncle Imam Hassan alayhi salam, would have been wiped out on this earth. Meaning that the speaking of the Imam was not something that was kept sanctified. That the Imam, because of the political environment, was in such a position that should he be seen as someone who stands against the opinion of the Khalifa, they would not hesitate to dare to kill the Imam. And the Imam's responsibility is protect the message of Islam. So the Imam's speech in society can't be something that can be seen as a political movement. The Imam's speech in society can't be something that is seen as invoking against the Khilafat. So how then does the Imam continue to teach and preach about the message of Islam? Through the art of supplication, through teaching through dua, through teaching through the fulfillment of needs in the asking of Allah and the communication of Allah. If you want to take a look and see, you'll see du'as of akhlaq, you'll see du'as of seeking thanks, you'll see du'as of overcoming your difficulties, you'll see du'as of protecting your future generations, of asking for your generations. Imam took all of the matters of society and he put them into du'a for you. Because the supplication was not seen, the communication between man and Allah was not seen as a threat to the Khilafat. Because the Khalifa had already said, Allah has nothing to do with me. In this way, the Imam continued the message the same way any Imam, had they been in that situation, would have protected the message of Islam. Our process now, when we look at this personality, is to take from him these lessons and learn to apply them in our day-to-day life. And there are 3 lessons that we'll mention from our Imam, if you're still with me, if it's not too much. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala We've done some tariq, we've done some philosophy, now let's do some lessons. The lessons we'll take are 3. 1, we look at the example of the Hajj of Imam Zainul Abidin. My Imam is someone who completed 30 Hajj in his life. Some he would go by walking, some he would go by camel. Sometimes he would go with a caravan in such a way he would look for a group of people going to Hajj who did not recognize him. And he would accompany them as a servant in this Hajj. And when the people eventually, when they would pass by towns and someone in the town would recognize, this is Ali ibn al-Hussain, this is the grandson of Rasulullah, the people would come to him and complain. They said, Yabna Rasulullah, why didn't you tell us who you are? Why did you serve us? We were riding and you were walking. The Imam said, I wanted to have the pleasure of Allah by taking care of His creation on this earth. When we look at the Hajj of Imam Zainul Abidin, there's a very famous statement that comes and says that one time when Imam Zainul Abidin was going to Hajj and he was on a camel, he threw himself from his camel into a state of sujood. His companions came and they said, Ya Rasulullah, what happened? He says, I found myself in a condition of fear of Allah and I wanted to prostrate to Him. He said, what do you mean? He says, in my heart I was reciting the talbiyah, Labbaik Allahumma Labbaik. He says, as I was reciting this talbiyah, Allah Labbaik, Allahumma Labbaik, Allah, I am here. I have come to you. I have come to your place. I have come, I want to be with you. He says, my heart became frightened. What if Allah replied, La Labbaik, I don't want you to come to me. He says, that fear in my heart made me want to prostrate before Allah. Look at us when we do acts of worship. When we go to Hajj, we go to Hajj with this pomp and this glory, and we get sent off and we put on our ihram, and now we take selfies and we post them on Instagram and we do all of these things as if we've achieved something great and mighty. But what if at one of those moments Allah says, I don't want you here. Don't come to me. You're not welcome at my house. You and I, what kind of sinners are we? Right? In Urdu they're saying, they say, "Saw chue khake, chali bili Hajj." We do all of these bad things in our life and then we go to Hajj. The Ma'soom Imam is teaching you, when I go to Hajj, even I have the fear that what if Allah didn't welcome me? Our concern in acts of worship is, I better get a reward. I better get something great, or I want Jannah. The Imam is teaching you and he's looking at it, he's saying, look and see, what do you acknowledge? Do you acknowledge that Allah has the right to refuse your act of worship? Was love of Allah in my heart when I performed this act of worship? Was I someone who really wanted and desired to be with Allah when I did this act of worship? Our namaz, our hajj, our fasting, all of these actions, we have to make sure that we look at this example, that Allah has the right to refuse us. What if He took this tawfiq away from us? What if we spent these years in worship and Allah doesn't accept from us? Do we care about that and His happiness and the pleasure of Allah when we worship Him? This is one lesson from the Imam. The second lesson of the Imam is when we take a look at the city of Medina. When Imam Hussain was leaving and was forced to leave Medina, the governor called on a personality, Marwan ibn Hakam, who was a mal'oon, evil personality. And Marwan was sent to Medina to either secure the bay'ah from Imam Hussain or to kill him. And that night when Imam Hussain goes to the governor's palace, he says, give me one night to think. Marwan is the one who says, take the head of Hussain now, he will never do bay'ah. If he leaves this place, you will never get his bay'ah. That Marwan. After the waqi'ah of Karbala, Marwan was the one who put evil and abuse upon all of the people of Medina for a long period of time, until eventually he fell out of favor with the Khalifa. When he falls out of favor with the Khalifa and he loses his position of governorship in Medina, he's kicked out of the governor's palace. Now the soldiers don't answer to him. No one answers him. The people of Medina gathered. And they said, today we will take retribution for all of the abuses from Marwan ibn Hakam. And they said, the one who has been abused worse than all of us is Ali ibn al-Hussain. Let him be the first one to take his retribution, then we will take our turn. And they gathered and they pinned him to a wall where he was stuck, and they waited. Someone went to go call the Imam and they said, bring the Imam, let him take his retribution so we can attack him. And the Imam, when he comes to this place, he sees the people gathering and Marwan cowering in fear. The Imam turns to him and he says, should you need any help, we will help you. And he walks away. This is the one who was responsible for the Imam, his father being the one who had to leave the city of Medina. He's responsible for many of the abuses against the Ahlul Bayt. The entire city recognizes the right of the Imam, but the Imam is not the one who goes and seeks retribution of his own right. You and I, someone does one wrong thing to us, and dekh lo zara, thehla. Wait until I get my turn. When we get to our turn, and that person has to come to us, we say, you remember what you did? Now you come to me? Or we're so embarrassed to go in front of someone or to deal with someone. But look at the character and the behavior of the Imam, that the authority of Allah is absolute over us. That Allah is the judge over us. We don't need to abuse one another. Let Allah decide the affairs. In our society, in our community, how often are we the ones who are ready to break relations and break ties and get retribution for every wrong deed that's done? Do we not have faith that Allah is present? Do we not have faith that Allah is aware of all of the sacrifices, the losses and the difficulties that we faced? Do we not believe that Allah is the one who can exact for us the retribution and give us our status? If that's the case, why do we take the time then to cause harm to one another? And let me tell you something, usually between us it's taking a parking spot, not helping someone or not serving someone a food or not saying salam first. It's not the affair of killing our fathers, na'uz billah. We have to look at the example of Imam Zainul Abidin, that though haqq may be with you, right may be with you, authority may be with you, don't abuse another human being. Don't be the first one to exact revenge on another human being. Leave those matters to Allah. The third lesson, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Is the dealing with difficulty and loss in life. My Imam, when he was questioned that the waqi of Karbala was so many years ago, we see you still crying today. He replied, he said, Yaqub lost Yusuf in this world and Yusuf was still alive, but Yaqub cried so much that he became blind. I saw my family martyred before me. How can I stop crying as long as I live? It's a very famous statement. There are 2 points from this. One is that how to mourn the Ahlul Bayt and that we should mourn the Shahadat of Imam Hussain was a lesson that was taught by Imam Zainul Abidin. That we don't forget that lesson and we always continue our relationship and attachment to the Ayam Azab Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam. The other aspect is that though there was grief in the life of Imam, did he ever stop his wajibat? Did he ever lose patience in the mercy of Allah? We all go through difficulties in life. We all go through challenges in life. And yes, as a human being, when we face difficulty, when we face problems, it's very legitimate that it affects our personality. It affects who we are as a person. However, we should always ensure that if we have yaqeen in Allah, that one, we don't take our pressures and difficulties out on those around us. And that two, we never let these difficulties prevent us from completing the mandatory actions of our life. Did you ever hear of Imam Zainul Abidin not providing for his wife and his children? No. Did you ever hear the Imam didn't pray because he was in a state of sorrow and sadness over the difficulties of his life? No. Did the Imam ever avoid fasting because he was sad? No. They said even after the event of Karbala, Sayyidah Zainab sends Jabir to go visit Imam Zainul Abidin. When Jabir says, Ya Sayyidah, why do I need to go visit him? She says, I see my nephew so busy in the worship of Allah that I fear he will die because of the way he worships Allah. Jabir, go tell my nephew not to exceed the bounds. You are a companion of Rasulullah. Maybe he will listen to you because you spend time with his grandfather, that if you tell him that don't be so excessive in your worship of Allah, he will stop. So on the request of Sayyidah Zainab, Jabir goes to Imam Zainul Abidin and he says to him that we have found you maybe too excessive in your worship. And Imam Zainul Abidin says, Jabir, do you think you can tell me better how to worship Allah than I can tell you? Jabir says, certainly you are the one who has the right, and that I won't question your actions anymore. And these are lessons for us that we take a look and we see. One is that when we worship Allah, do we have true fear of Allah in our hearts? Two, that when we deal with society and we deal with our communities, we are individuals who have patience, who have the ability to have sabr, that we aren't the ones who exact revenge and chase after one another. And three, that we put Allah as a priority and we don't let the difficulties of life prevent us from keeping our relationship with Allah. If these were the lessons that we could learn from our Imam, and we would reflect on these lessons by the purpose of mawaddah, we would have completed the task that Allah commanded of His ummah. That He said, I don't want any reward from you except love of my near ones. When we commit these actions to our personality, inshallah we pray that Allah makes us from those who are the ones who are worthy of the shafa'a of Imam Zainul Abidin. We raise our hands for dua. Ya Mahmud bihaqqi Muhammad, Ya A'la bihaqqi Ali, Ya Fatiru as-samawati wal ard bihaqqi Fatima, Ya Muhsinu bihaqqi al-Hasani, Ya Qadim al-Ihsan bihaqqi al-Hussain. Oh Allah, accept this small ibadah from us. Oh Allah, forgive our sins and cover our flaws. Oh Allah, there are those who have come here with hajat. By the right of the mention of the Ahlul Bayt, fulfill their hajat. Oh Allah, by the right of Imam Zainul Abidin, those amongst our community, our families, our friends and the mu'mineen around the world who are sick, give them shifa'a kamil. Oh Allah, hasten the reappearance of Imam Zaman. Oh Allah, make us from the upright supporters of Imam Zaman and guide our children on the religion of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. رحم الله من يقرأ سورة الفاتحة مع الصلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. As it is Thursday night, let's recite one Surah Fatiha, 3 times Ikhlas for our marhumin, the marhumin in our community, our families, our friends, and those marhumin who have no one to recite Fatiha for them. Bismillah. So